We leave no one behind here. So. All right, well, good evening, everybody. I'm going to call to order this October 1st regular board business meeting. All of our board of directors are in attendance. For communication from the audience, time has been set aside on the agenda for citizens' requests of the board. In this coronavirus COVID-19 environment, in keeping with the efforts of social distancing to reduce the spread of coronavirus, we're obviously conducting this one online rather than in person. So if you're a member of the community and wish to provide public comment, please email your comments to Avery4, that's AVERY 4, at gresham.k12.or.us. Email her ahead of the meeting and your comments will be part of the public record. Okay, at this time we have a meeting agenda.
Move to approve the meeting agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, moved by Director Howitt, seconded by Director O'Connell to approve the meeting agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. On the consent agenda, all items on the consent agenda are matters considered by the board to be routine, will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of the board or persons in the audience request specific items be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. At this time, we have 8 items on the consent agenda. Item 1, minutes from the regular strategic planning retreat from August 21st. Item 2, minutes from regular work session, September 3rd. Minutes from the regular business meeting, September 3rd. Minutes from the regular work session, September 17th, and minutes from the special work session, September 24th. In addition, we have a financial report, a personnel report related to employee contracts, and a physical restraint and seclusion review from 2019 to 20.
Mr. Chair, I would request that we remove the physical restraint and seclusion review from B8 consent agenda to E3 under presentations, with a reminder that we need to do an action on that item when it's moved as well.
Okay. I have a request to remove item B8 and move it to E3. Are there any other requests for the consent agenda? Okay.
I second Chris's recommendation.
You don't need to second it.
Oh, good.
Make the motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Thank you.
I move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Director O'Connell, seconded by Director Howitt to approve the consent agenda as amended. That amendment is, again, moving item B8 to E3, so we'll discuss it later, the physical restraint and seclusion review. Okay, any discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, any opposed? Okay. This time we move to recognitions and specifically National Principals Month. So Athena Vadnais, this has your name on it.
Thank you, Chair Peterson. October 2020 has been designated as National Principals Month and is made possible by the efforts of the National Association of Elementary School Principals, the American Federation of School Administrators, and the National Association of Secondary School Principals. It is appropriate that the board officially acknowledge the importance of a strong school system and the contribution that principals make to that system, and a resolution of acknowledgement for that purpose has been created for the board's adoption.
Okay. Thank you, principals. We couldn't do it probably June, July, or August because you were still working really, really hard. So we've tried to squeeze it into October, I guess. There's a resolution attached, knowing that many of our principals attend this meeting. I think the greatest gift we could probably give to them is to have our audience review that resolution. Shall we read it into record or do we want to affirm it? Tell you what, I'll read it. Whereas the designation of October 2020 is as National Principals Month is made possible by the efforts of the National Association of Elementary School Principals, the American Federation of School Administrators, and the National Association of Secondary School Principals. And whereas the vision, dedication, and determination of a principal is a significant mobilizing force behind any school reform effort. And whereas principals serve a variety of critical roles such as instructional leader, community builder, assessment expert, community relations expert, facility and student managers, and guardians of various legal, contractual, and policy mandates and initiatives, and are entrusted with the education and development of young people. And whereas principals set the academic and cultural tone for their schools by working collaboratively with teachers and other staff to develop and maintain high standards of performance to develop young people that will be positive contributing members of our society. And whereas principals play a vital role in successful implementation of state and federal education initiatives, and especially this year in managing the impact and supporting the needs of students and staff during the COVID-19 public health emergency. And whereas principals are committed to providing high quality learning opportunities to all students, now therefore we, the members of the Board of Directors for the Gresham-Barlow School District, hereby declare our appreciation to our principal staff and proclaim the month of October to be Principals Month. Be it further resolved that we urge administrators, teachers, parents, students, and others from our community to join us in recognizing the dedication and hard work of these individuals. By resolution of the Board of Directors this first day of October 2020.
So I would move to accept the resolution as it was read by Chair Peterson.
I'll second.
Okay. Moved by Director Howitt, seconded by Director O'Connell to accept the Principals Month October 2020 resolution. Any discussion?
I just want to point out of how special it is to be able to recognize our principals and highlight all the good work they do and the importance that resolutions, how important they are in being able to acknowledge important individuals in our community. And I would like to, again, thank all of our principals and be able to make more resolutions that can support our important communities.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, principals. Again, digital is the worst recognition we can do, but we do our best. And thank you, Athena, for bringing it forward. Okay, at this time we have time for Superintendent District Leadership Team report. I'd like to turn this over to Dr. Pereira.
Yes, thank you, Chair Peterson. I do have a slight update and also wanted to extend, I would be remiss if I did not use this time as well to express my appreciation for the additional responsibilities that our principal has taken on, obviously through this COVID pandemic and health emergency. I can share that we could not maintain the safety and health of our learning environments without their help and assistance throughout. And so I'm pleased to recognize each of our principals throughout the month of October. Seems like it should be a whole year more than just a month. But I also think the same when we come to Teacher Appreciation Week, a week should be the entire year. Nonetheless, with that, I will have a few district leadership updates. Lisa, I think is first with the Return to Learn update and overview, some metric information from John.
Thank you. Superintendent Pereira and board. We have been working a lot on our Return to Learn, starting our second week, and within that, a lot of work to continue to prepare for what is next. As we reported to you last meeting, we shared the metrics, and John will share those again, and that really guides what we are able to do and with which students we are able to do them. And so we'll go into that in a moment. But in the meantime, how to prepare is, again, we've continued and we will continue throughout this year our rapid response teams. And that includes the operations specific, John and the leadership of our administrators around finishing any of the planning for a hybrid approach and what that looks like, and possible, and finalizing the plans around opportunities to bring some of our most marginalized populations back because of the distance learning complications that it brings. We also have continued to work on the research and assessment and evaluation of that. We know that we have our fall diagnostics and want to make sure that we're explaining how to do that from a distance and how to best collect that information, because it is part of our dashboard and we want to continue everything that we bring. We know that there will be a spot where it is slightly noticed that we are in a comprehensive distance learning plan, but we want to make sure that those really guide our instructions. John has restarted the detailed planning for the future return to physical schools with the response team and and the online expectations for students, family, and staff. Karina with English language learning, she's continued to meet weekly with her team around how are we serving in a co-teaching, co-planning model for our students, and make sure that communications work with our families and the expectations for how to support our students who speak other languages. And then the DLI, dual language instruction, continues to be meeting regularly, because we want to make sure, although we've launched in a new site, that that it runs just as smoothly as last year, as I know that it is. Carla has been working with partnerships and aligning those partnership agreements and plans and what that looks like. And we've been having several meetings about, and it's similar to the questions being brought up tonight about the partnerships and volunteerism, that we want to make sure that we have the right setup as we are at a distance learning, and how we utilize our tools and make sure that we have the appropriate measures in place as we are reaching to our students and families. Also, CTE and STEM is getting some really exciting projects going. And even though it's at a distance, there's amazing things that we're able to do, which is very much hands-on. Measure 98, we're leveraging those funds. As you know, those are some of the funds that were not, they were fully funded. And that has really been supporting our multi-tiered systems of support throughout the district. Federal programs has been working with the Title I programs and supporting to make sure that they are having all of their additional services that we provide those schools and students. Technology, we have distributed over 9,200 devices, if you haven't heard that number, and over 200 hotspots in September. And we're now working on 7 new online software and platforms. That's just probably 7 too many, but I mean, things behind the scenes that will really guide our students and our teachers and our planning to run smoothly. Canvas, our new learning management system, which was adopted through the board at your session, and Remind are 2 of the most important that will be. Remind is something that's a communication tool that's going to be very handy to contact parents and help with that. And Canvas will be a slow rollout as we move into the year. Student support services, and again, our students with special needs, again, working on that co-planning and co-teaching, and our new schedules really support that. And we want to make sure that we're maximizing the supports, and the classified have really been trained in all of our tools to make sure that those small groups are running smoothly, and really appreciate that. The teaching and learning team continue with the professional learning in Canvas, and we've started with just a very holistic approach and the why as to why we moved to a more comprehensive learning management system, and all of the pieces that will come together and fit nicely into one overarching management system. So John, would you like to talk about our metrics and how, although we met last week or last time, I think it was last week that we actually shared that the metrics were increasing. And again, although they are increasing and we don't see a future of bringing students to our brick and mortar schools, we want to keep an eye on that and know that we will be ready and give people plenty of time to prepare for that.
Lisa, actually, I misspoke. John is on the agenda during presentations.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Okay. I apologize. But let me end by saying, I really want to tell you in all of the districts that I have worked, and I just want to tell you that I admire our principals immensely, their professionalism, they're able to operate, their instructional supports, their willingness to jump into this work. It's heavy. We know that this is a very difficult time, and yet every time we meet, and we get to meet with them weekly, they are troubleshooting and coming up with best ways to serve our students and our families. And I really appreciate their willingness to always be there in every situation for our kids. So thank you very much, and happy Principals Month.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa, for that report. Chair Peterson, that is my report.
Well, I had a brief question that you brought up Canvas, and I know that this was talked about at the strategic planning meeting. I just wanted to know, is Canvas going to present a different user interface for families?
A different Jeff, would you like to?
It's Google Classroom mostly.
Correct. It will replace Google Classroom.
Okay.
And for many reasons, but that's why we're going to take it slowly. They're willing to not only prepare we're not the experts yet. I'm sure Jeff is an expert. However, we all need to grow our ability to learn all of the great things that it does. That's going to take some time. Updating principals, gave the overview to teachers, and then that we will be reaching out with a lot of support for families, a lot of support for students, and a lot of support for our clerical staff, and making that a slow adjustment. Most LMSs, and I'm speaking probably something that Jeff would say, is you want to take a 4 to 5 to 6 month approach and not overwhelm anyone, especially our most vulnerable populations and our students that may have trouble understanding all of the changes. So it's going to be slow and steady with a lot of support.
Thank you. Any other questions related to the district update? Okay. Thank you, Dr. Pereira. Thank you, Lisa. Okay. Next up, we have some presentations. First up is an enrollment update. Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Chair. In the attachment, you'll see a very different report from what you've seen in past years. Primarily, that's due to the fact that we started school late. Usually this is the 4th week going in, and we have a very good handle on numbers. And right now we're just getting to where we've got a good handle at the school level. So we haven't done our class size analysis yet. That'll come next week, which I am happy to present to you guys later at a work session or at a business meeting in November so that everybody has that as well. I will give you that the summary is that, let me get down here to my notes. Our projected number for budgeting purposes last year was 10,694 for this year for enrollment. That didn't count our charters and others, just in our schools, our 17 schools. We are currently enrolled at 10,246. That's substantially lower. Our current warm body count is 10,206. And the reason that's significant is the 10-day drop, where if students don't show up for 10 days is tomorrow. And that's another reason why our numbers are not firm yet. That 10-day period hasn't ended. So we will know more concrete numbers on Monday. Our warm body count right now is 488 students off projections. And with 20 pending registrations, it leads us at about 468 off of our projections. So we are down.
And it does look like a lot of that is in the lower grades, the kindergarten in particular, as well as first and second. Do we know if some of those families just have not committed yet or have switched to homeschooling or doing some other, that seemed to be the group that was really on the fence about online learning?
Yes, and I can speculate that a lot of that's true. I'll give you some numbers now that can play into that. It's a state report that we do. It's not part of this presentation, but I have it in front of me. With our current, we have 1,279 students enrolled in our charters. We have 353 students now enrolled in online public charters around the state, around the region. That is at 2.83%, where we have been much lower than that in the past. So many students have gone to online charters. I don't have that by grade level for you. I can say that our surrounding districts reached the 3% statutory threshold in the summer. We haven't reached that yet, which is good news. And this didn't escalate a great deal until the past week and a half, as we started to get requests for records. We have 480 students in our boundaries that homeschool. We've always had several hundred. I just hadn't paid as much attention to that number in the past, so I can't do a firm comparison for you, but I do know we got a lot of requests for how do I enroll to homeschool my students this summer. So that will explain much of our loss.
Is there any regional comparison? Like, so by the tally on the sheet, then we're down 3.8% enrollment from what our budgeted enrollment would have been.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, is there any way to know if that's reasonably close to our regional comparators or statewide?
I have not reached out to our regional comparators since these numbers are just coming firm, and I just talked to Jordan in a little bit of detail this afternoon about what the numbers are and what they may mean. So we have to do that research for you, Chair.
John, if I could interject real fast, this is informal. It's not on the record or anything. Business officials in our region did meet this last week to just kind of get a straw poll at where we're at. And districts in our region are 3 to 5% down across the board. Tiger Tualatin so far has seen the biggest hit. I think they're at 5.6% down. North Clackamas was right on par with us. I think they're 3.6. So 3 to 6%, I guess, in our area. I don't know what it looks like statewide. The reason that I say this is because if that enrollment count is down across the state, we actually won't expect to see much of an impact to our revenue. So the state pie will just be divvied up in larger amounts to each student.
And Chair, I can confirm that as well. And speaking with superintendents in the area, everyone is seeing downs. And as John and both Jordan alluded to, they saw their numbers drop in summer, whereas we're just kind of seeing some of those drop right now.
Not coincidentally, given that as Chair or as Board Member Howitt pointed out, the elementaries, which is typically where we see our bigger class size issues each year, where we have to rebalance and do some things, we're not seeing those issues. We've got a couple of bubbles that we do need to address, but it has given us a bit of a silver lining at this point.
And I think we'd already been talking about the lower birth rate over the last few years in Oregon anyhow, that our kindergarten and first grade classes were not necessarily going to be as full as they had been previously. Maybe in a few years, we might be seeing a little bit more of a bubble again, get a few more kids back.
Okay. To summarize my perspective for the benefit of the public conversation, and asking Jordan for you to step in and correct me as soon as I start speaking blasphemous. As you alluded to, our revenue issue comes into play if, say, the state's average were 1% and we're 3.8%. Because now the state school fund, which is a fixed pot of money, is distributed still evenly across the students across the state. But with us having less students, that becomes less less revenue overall. And
That
that's
is correct.
significant because the bulk of our costs are fixed costs. They're people. The great principals that we just celebrated, the great teachers, classified staff, that's our key deliverable to our community. And so right now that sounds encouraging to me. If we're checking out across similar communities as ours, and usually Gresham is a pretty middle cut of the state, that seems like encouraging news. Anyway, that's my interpretation.
Your interpretation is spot on. Just a quick summary. We are not expecting to see revenue impacts from the economic condition. The state's forecast was very encouraging for the 21-23 biennium. So we're not expecting to see, and for the current biennium, we're not expecting to see revenue impacts from the economic condition. The revenue impacts will be the result of the student population condition. And so we just, unfortunately, just have to ride this out and wait to see how it kind of shakes out statewide.
And you're thinking in the next few weeks we'll have some resolution about that? Is that
we will have preliminary numbers. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions for related to the enrollment report? Okay, thank you, Mr. Cook. Thank you, Julie, as well. Okay, next up is our return to learn metrics update. We talked briefly about this, but now a little bit more detail. Mr. Cook, it's you again.
Thank you again, Chair. In your packets, you'll see the latest this week's numbers and the trends, and I will go through them with you left to right. As anticipated from the Labor Day weekend and other things, we are seeing the metrics when it comes to K-3 return at 30 cases per 100,000. It's an upward move. I wouldn't call it a trend yet. It's one line, one spot, but it is an upward move. Same in Clackamas County. And in Clackamas County, we have 2 points moving up, so that you could call that a trend up. So we're not meeting that. And given the numbers that we are seeing this week, I think it was 363 new cases today, which is huge. I don't anticipate that trend to change, but we can remain hopeful. When it comes to the county metric positivity rate, Multnomah County saw a rise. Clackamas County stayed flat. But Clackamas County, given the fires and everything else, they did see a reduced amount of testing. That could contribute to this. Maybe it didn't. But obviously there was a lot of chaos going on in Clackamas County to address the fires. The state positivity rate is on an upward trend and has been for 4 weeks. So we saw another move upward, and that impacts the 4th through 12th grade return because that has to be down below 5% for 3 weeks, and we have not gotten there.
Chair Peterson, I just wanted to remind our public that this metric is in our Return to Learn plan on page 10 of our, it's on our website as well. So it's a live and active metric account.
I believe the state updates it every Tuesday, and that's when we update ours.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Pereira, for that. Just to clarify to families, if you're watching, right in the top menu, so if you on the landing page of the Gresham-Barlow website, which is gresham.k12.or.us, you can see the Return to Learn plan. Click to view the plan, and then within that, there's a dynamic update, so we can all see how it is. It's not quite the same as counting down because we really don't know, but as we stay vigilant, optimistic that we'll get our kids returned to school someday. Okay, any questions from the board? Okay, thank you again, Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, at this time, we're gonna take the item that we had pulled from consent agenda. That's gonna be our physical restraint and seclusion review. And Ms. Cook, this has your name on it. So thank you for being here.
Yes, and thank you, Chair Peterson. as you can see in the explanation, the report is required each year. And so what you have here is the report. In addition, we knew that there was interest in seeing trends over time. And so we put together a 5-year trend to kind of see how things have evolved over time. As you know, there were some pretty significant changes to our programming over the last few years, and sometimes it takes a little bit of time to see the impact of the data. And so some things I wanted to highlight, first starting with the annual report, is that, you know, last year we had 10,600 students, and we have 1,500 students on IEPs. And what I think is a significant celebration is the number of students in terms of progress is down to 23 students that were involved. There was 51 or 47 last year, one of the other 2 years. So we've seen a decrease. And we've, given that we had the COVID closure, and we had, in comparing the same window of time, that September to March time, there was a 40 student decrease, a 40 incident decrease over that time. And so that is definitely the direction we want to go. There's been a lot of work with implementing, you know, diffusing de-escalation strategies across the district. And so that's a real positive forward move for us. The other thing is that with the number being that there's 23 students involved in 45 restraints, those are actually also very low numbers. And anytime we have really low numbers and we start, you know, looking at risk ratios and proportions, it can sometimes skew our numbers a little bit. And so we're keeping that as a caution, but we're still looking at the pattern and the trends over time. So that's something just wanted to put out there. I think in terms of looking at how we're doing, I think our district, we started looking at disproportionality data some time ago, and that's absolutely the thing we want to keep our eye on. And one of the things that's a celebration for us is our special education eligibility rates. We are not flagged as disproportionate. The district has worked hard in that area in our evaluations to make sure that we are identifying students, you know, based on disability, not in a disproportionate manner. And so I wanted to highlight that. Other things I wanted to know as part of our practice is our behaviors social team looks at the seclusion and restraint report, looks at that weekly, so that we're watching very closely to make sure that we're staying on top of things. And if we see anything that doesn't look like it needs to be there, then we're actively working on responding and making sure we've got the right support plans in place for students. Because really, when it comes to restraint, the last thing we ever want to do is ever have to use our hands on students to keep them safe. But that is the threshold with which, if we see that there's a very unsafe situation and a student could be harmed, that's when those protocols would get into place. So overall, that's kind of the overview. I wanted to share the highlights. I'm guessing that there may be some questions.
Michele, thank you. I'm curious about the restraints performed by untrained staff. Can you give us examples of when an untrained staff would do this? Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
For example, if you had a student that was, let's say, running towards a street and there was cars, a staff member who is going to look at the situation and go, we need to keep the student safe. And part of that is we want those reports to come in, because if we have staff that are in a situation where they're having to intervene, we then can be responsive and say, this person needs to be trained for this reason. And so it's we want to keep that number low, but we also want it to be real, because we need to make sure we're giving our staff the training that they need so that they're able to intervene in the safest way possible with students.
Michele, you want to talk a little bit about the training?
Sure, I'll share first. So the program that we use is called MANT training, and it's really 80% of it is focused on de-escalation and diffusion. And part of that is understanding that our students come to us, sometimes they may come to us already in a fight or flight sort of state, and sometimes that isn't visible. And so it's intentional training to help staff begin to recognize when a student might be in the process of an escalation cycle, because the sooner we recognize what's going on, we can immediately adjust our responses to help bring students down so that they don't feel threatened, because behavior is a form of communication. And when students begin to escalate, they're letting us know, I'm not okay. And so we're really stepped up our focus on helping our staff get better at reading the landscape for kids. How are they doing? What's going on? Now I'm going to adjust my response to help that student feel safe, so they don't feel that they have to engage in increasingly escalating behaviors in order to get their needs met. And so the training is focused heavily on that. And then of course there are, if you do have to help a student stay safe, there's very specific ways that, and how we do that so that we are very careful not to harm students, and just get them to a place where they're safe, and then they come down from that escalation.
So 2 questions.
Sure.
You said when you were first starting the conversation that there was longitudinal data on here, and at least on the report that we have, it's just 1 year. So am I missing something or just not reading it?
There's a second document that's in the board doc.
Okay.
It says 5-year trend.
It was just added.
It was just added. Okay. All right.
Okay.
And then my second question is, you were saying that restraint was putting hands to a student. Is it considered restraint if a student's headed for a door and staff member gets between the student and the door? The student
No,
can't move out. So it has to be physical touch is considered, and physical touch can be under the MANT training far less restricted than it's to kind of push and redirect. Yeah,
and the actual definition, because the state just reworked some of that because we want to make sure that it's the whole idea of restraint is it's a restraint when you're applying pressure, then the student is pushing against it and trying to get away. Now it's a restraint. If it's just I'm helping the student along and they're walking with me and I'm not having to apply any pressure for them to walk beside me, that's not a restraint.
Okay.
Does that clarify?
Yeah, and so was that part of when the legislature changed the rules slightly, that enabled teachers and classified staff as well to intervene before it became a harmful situation where it could, again, that de-escalation part.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think over time, there was, when a lot of this legislation first came out 5-10 years ago, it's probably further back than that, but there was, we were trying to really change our practice to really be hands-off with students, but sometimes, particularly with little ones, they don't have the language development yet to really, you can't just verbally say, hey, come over here. Sometimes that doesn't work. And so we found that we didn't want staff to be afraid to just kind of guide a student to prevent a further escalation. And so that's why that change happened, was to kind of help bring a little bit more of a balance to that. So yes, that's what I understand as well.
Okay. Chair Peterson, does this need to have then a motion to accept the report since we pulled it out of consent agenda?
I haven't made my comments.
I want to open it for further questions.
Okay. Yeah, I am incredibly sorry. Is everyone? Yeah, I'm getting like really weird reception. But I was incredibly disappointed when I saw these numbers. And even seeing the 5-year trend about how Black students are overly represented, up to 20% when they make up 3% of our district. And it looks like we have done nothing to address the disparities in how we restrain our Black students. Could somebody speak to that?
Sure. I think what I would want to offer is that we've started looking at our disproportionality data. We've been really digging into that, and that's one of the reasons that we do have the data we have here, because we do see the disparity, we do see that disproportionality, and that's something that's really important to get at. And so that's where, when we think about what the research tells us about where some of this is coming from, is it's really starts with the cultures in our schools and how we elevate understanding of culturally responsive teaching practices. And we've definitely done a lot of work in that department. The other place that there's a lot of work to be done still is in developing our social emotional support capacity. And one of the things I'm excited about is that we've kind of taken advantage of this time during comprehensive distance learning to really do some district-wide professional development with the CASEL competencies. And those competencies are really getting at specific skills to help students develop the tools they need to manage their own emotions, learn to ask for help when needed, and also help staff know how do we need to do things differently through a more culturally responsive lens to support our students. And so that work is already underway. And Then we also
I'm
have the
gonna
adoption
push
of the ruler
back
framework.
and stop a little.
So
I'm going to push back and stop a little because like when you talk about, you know, like having these emotionally, you know, these trainings to help students, that's kind of putting back on the student when it's for the institutional racism, and we are responsible for overrepresenting Black students, period. And so this isn't because Black students haven't gotten this emotional awareness training. It is purely because whatever the representation is, if these are Black students and they're overrepresented in special education, if they're Black students in the general student population, there is an overrepresentation of restraint of Black students by our staff. And that is an indicator of institutional racism. And these are the numbers that we really need to look at. And if we have these numbers, and for the past 5 years, every single year, it has says we have overrepresented, over-targeted our Black students in restraint. It doesn't matter if it's just 5 students, 8 students, 10 students. That could be all the students in the entire school. That is unacceptable on any level, on every level. And then when we are talking about equity, when we are talking about, you know, our responsibility and accountability to our students, and particularly our students of color, these conversations and these presentations should not be hidden in our consent agenda. They need to be given the time and the space so that we can have it, so that we can point this out. This is a major issue. This isn't like, look at this, these are the numbers, move forward, that we put our hands on students, on Black students particularly, at 22%. My mind was blown. My mind was blown. Should we create a policy that says, do not touch Black students? Don't touch them? Should we have a review that every time a Black student is restrained, that teacher is investigated for why? Because the issue is not with the students. The issue is with our schools. And that is a very clear indication that we in this arena have not treated our Black students fairly.
I wanted to, well, real quick, sorry, Director Howitt. Because there's different numbers being thrown out. And so I want to make sure I clarify. The 20% is of total restraint incidents, 20% is of Black students. When looking at and I'm not dismissing that that's an issue, by the way. I just want to make sure that's clear. But in looking at the 5-year trend data, that's where we actually see the number of students. So the 20% could be one student multiple times, right? Or whereas the 5-year trend data might be more useful to a conversation that we do need to have.
So it's 15% and they're 3% of the population. That is crazy.
Okay, I'm gonna just, I have 3 divided by 45 is 6.7%. Still of concern, but I have 6.7%. And so I do want to clarify the number. Because on that 5-year trend data, I believe that's calling out individual students, no matter the volume of restraints, and that's the percentage of student population that has been restrained, if that makes sense. So what that means is
that for this year, because those are different numbers.
That's for 2019-20. If we look at that 5-year trend data, so I'm looking at the number of students restrained column, and so we want to ignore economic disadvantaged students with disability, students without disability for the purpose of this conversation, not overall, because there's intersectionality in that, right? The Black students there's 3 Black students were restrained in 2019-20. And then if I look in that 3rd column over where it says number of restraints, 44 in elementary, 1 in middle school, that's 45 total students. So if I take 3 divided by 45, I get 6.7%, which is still a flag. And so if I'm not mistaken, and then it'll be my last, that means that 3 Black students represented 20% of our total district restraints, if I'm crossing that data.
Actually, the way that this reads is that the number of incidents, the number of restraints is the number of restraints for across the 23 students. What we don't have is specifically, that would be in this report, is which students, how many times. And so if you think about the number of students restrained, there were 23 students involved in 45 restraints this year. And to offer, and I don't want to, and I want to acknowledge that, yes, there is systemic racism, things that we need to do better. We need to do better. So I hear that. What is a positive is that our numbers are coming down. The numbers of students is coming down that have been involved in restraints, because the healthier our system gets and the stronger our staff are at supporting our students with the needs they have, whatever they are when they come in, the less we're going to see that. And so, and I also want to, that we do have students that are experiencing disability, and about half of the restraints are for students experiencing disability. And that is part of their plans, part of their IEP, is to make sure that we're keeping them safe and minimizing the use of that.
Disability. So I don't think it's appropriate to say, oh, well, students with disability. I just want with this higher number, same across. And so to say that like that is the reason why Black students are overrepresented, I think that is
that's not what I'm saying. Yeah.
Issue of institutions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 6%, 20% of restraints. It's an overrepresentation. Yeah. Sorry. It's an overrepresentation, and I still feel the same about it. I really do not think that this is acceptable, and I think that there needs to be urgency behind how we treat our Black students, especially when it deals with restraint.
Chair Sowers, actually that would be in my wheelhouse as operations, and we have plans and strategic ways we are approaching this that we probably need to sit down and share with you that what's happening. These are numbers and it's simply a report. And definitely can sit down with you and talk through what's happening and how we've added behavior specialists and teams. We've added more counselors as well in order to help in these situations. And as Michelle highlighted, that is a situation where some of these students, it's part of their disability. And we have behavior plans in place to help do that. And again, you remember you're looking at from year to year. So it may not even be the same students every year. And we also have students who are intersecting. Not trying to make an excuse for any of it, because the data is the data. But I think understanding better what has occurred over time would give you a better perspective than just seeing numbers and making assumptions about what's going on in our classrooms.
I mean, the numbers tell the story, and without these numbers, we already know the story. And so we already know as a district, as schools, that we are, we are racist, that we have institutional racism within our schools. And on top of that, we have numbers that consistently support problems that are going on, reoccurring problems. And to me, knowing that and having numbers, like without these numbers, I could have probably, said that there was disparities, within discipline, within restraint, without even having numbers. And then we have numbers year after year after year that show disparity. And I would like to have some urgency around this. I would like to have some major urgency to say, this isn't going to happen next year. This is not going to happen again. That we're not going to wait until all our teachers have the equity training that they need to not put their hands on Black children, that it just does not happen.
So I want to remind John, remember John, when I joined the board 2 years ago, I think I asked for the same report. We had a similar conversation. So I do want to congratulate the district for the progress it's made, because the numbers are lower from when I first asked for this report. And I also want to remind us that our staff did commit to training, because they are very aware that it is within us, it's in the classroom. Biases are in the classroom. They've said that. Drake committed to providing that training to staff as well. So I am looking forward to seeing what that training is like, because I know you all have been going to trainings. So, and I'm contributing the reduction in these numbers to the training that you all have been going to the systems that you've been changing. And we do, like Robin said, we do have a systemic racist school system, and it's old, it was designed that way. So it is going to take time to dismantle it And for these 2 years that I've been here, I've seen progress. So that's pretty quick for me. And yeah, I do agree that it is urgent because in the meantime, we're still losing kids. But I would say that I do admire the work because it doesn't happen everywhere. Unfortunately, it does not happen everywhere. So thank you.
Thank you.
Director Howitt, you had some questions. Were those resolved?
A lot of them have been answered. Where I had some questions about what was the count on some of the things, what was the actual number of students. The number has been going down, and I realized that last year was a shortened school year. I appreciate as well the recommendations have been directed towards adult behavior. I'm not sure that we're saying that children need to be more responsive or de-escalate themselves. We're looking to the adults in the room to be the adults in the room and deal with the student behavior and help them do it. But ultimately, it's the adult in the room. And and I think we also have, and we've talked about this in some of our other meetings as well, that there are historically and across nationwide, students of color do get identified as special needs, often more frequently, and we are looking at that. And likewise, in our school, we've talked about we don't have a consistent way of even saying what our student population is. It's self-identified by families. It's duplicate, dual markings that the Oregon Department of Ed has even said if someone marks 2, they tend to default to one particular ethnicity rather than showing both. So there's issues with some of the ways the data is, but I am pleased that the numbers are going down and pleased that we are able to see the numbers and we're not done with the work. We're not saying, well, that's a good number, I guess we're done. That's not what we're saying at all. And looking at the risk factors for students, the risk factors for adults, and again, making sure that that adults are looking at this as how can I not get to that point? And at the very least, make sure that we have a classroom that works for all students. I also look at by program, the Structured Skills Center, where the majority of our restraints happen. And the Structured Skills Center is not a traditional classroom. It is a different setting. And so that particular area, I'm actually pleased that there are not more restraints in that it means that they're working better with the MANT process and working better with de-escalation because the students often in those classrooms have a variety of needs that don't always respond well to someone saying, hey, can you sit down? We're going to do our work now. So it is a comprehensive, a whole student environment. And I don't think we're ignoring it. But I also think that it's a continued working on it. And the recommendations continue and what recommendations we've done as well, the actions taken. So that's where I was. And I do appreciate that we pulled this out of consent agenda so that we can have the conversation to make sure that the numbers mean what everyone thinks they mean. And so that we have this opportunity to be able to see this data.
Okay. Thank you, Director Howard. I would, my advisement toward the Dr. Pereira and whoever will serve as board chair in following years. This is the 3rd or 4th consecutive year that we've pulled this from consent agenda. It's a significant issue that we do review pretty thoroughly every year. This isn't a unique one. I think maybe our best practice going forward is not to ever include it in consent, even if that has been the historic norm. Our recent behavior would indicate it's always going to get pulled. So
noted.
Okay, so we do have action though to take.
So I would move to accept the report.
I second.
Okay, I'm sorry, I clicked away. Was that you, Director Gomez?
Yes.
On the second? Okay, so moved by Director Howitt, seconded by Director Gomez to approve the physical restraint and seclusion review 2019 to 20. Any discussion?
No, clarification, not to approve, to adopt it.
To adopt.
Yeah, we're not approving it. It is what it is. We're just adopting it.
Okay,
Adopt
so
this.
I'm gonna step back because I misstated the motion. It's been moved by Director Howitt, seconded by Director Gomez to adopt the physical restraint and seclusion report 2019-20. Okay. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Any opposed? Okay. Dr.
And
Pereira,
under normal circumstances, Chair Peterson, I don't know how much work is involved or if it actually gives us anything else. Annually, it's a little bit late sometimes. Is it possible, and I look to perhaps Ms. Cook and Mr. Cook, to do a semi-annual, or is that a lot of extra work that it's better to look at the final numbers when we get to the end of the year? Just a thought.
I can definitely see what that would do. I mean, the report, the process is such that I think it could be done. You can definitely look into that.
Michelle, I think and the short answer is yes, Director Howitt. The deep analysis that's done, if you'll see that at the end of the report, maybe not as much mid-year, but the numbers certainly.
Chair Howard, I think we can make that a part of the, when we give you the disciplinary situations and data in February, I think it could be the data, as John said, could be attached to that as well.
I think it'd also be interesting to see when these happen, because we know there's times of the year when kids are going through stress or additional trauma. So it'd be interesting to see where we can offer those additional supports during the year.
And I also think that it would be good if maybe restrainers or instructors know that there's more eyes on this, that maybe different decisions will be made.
I think that the trainers have more of a passion about not restraining kids than any of us sitting here. They are behavior specialists and they're pretty outstanding, so they'll be appreciative of that.
Okay.
Especially, and I believe on. So.
Okay, we're gonna.
I didn't.
Thank you.
I didn't get any of that. What did you say, Robin? I'm sorry.
I said they're specialists. I believe there's institutional race going.
Okay. All right, Dr. Pereira, Mrs. Cook, thank you for bringing the report to us. And thanks for being prepared to see it pulled out of consent. Okay, we are now, I have a board recess on the agenda. I'm inclined to move through it in the interest of time. Okay, so at this time we have time for association reports. First up is the Gresham-Barlow Education Association and Rhett Hyman.
Hey, good evening, Chair Peterson and Superintendent Pereira and Board of Directors. Appreciate your time. As you know, school started late and even later with the wildfires. And I just want to give a big shout out to all our teachers who have worked tirelessly for, I don't know, it feels like the last year, but it's only been a couple weeks to get ready for our students. And talking with teachers, they are feeling overwhelmed with all of their things that they need to do and learn, but they are really doing a good job of meeting the needs of our students, being able to do the social emotional check-ins every morning for this last, I guess we're in week 2, no, we're in week 1. Gosh, I can't keep track of things. But anyways, they are really working hard. I know a lot of them, I talked to lots of them, and they are really feeling overwhelmed with all the responsibility and learning all of these new things. But as you know, our teachers in our district really rise to the occasion and really do a good job of meeting the needs for our families, especially during this time. Personally, I've really enjoyed this week as getting back into teaching, even though it's by video. I've really been pleased to be able to see my kids, check in with my kids, connect with my kids in multiple different ways, and starting to teach some of the subjects has, even though it's not normal, it's starting to feel maybe a little bit more normal than what it was back in the spring. But again, a big shout out to the teachers who, as you know, work their tails off to get things ready, and also appreciate working with John and James and Lisa as we continue to work on an MOU for this distance learning. We've met a lot over many issues, but we're working, I believe, really well collaboratively and trying to make the best decisions for our families and for our staff members in this district. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Rhett.
And Rhett, I also want to mention that during the fires, we had several staff members be evacuated from their homes, and they weren't worried about them or their homes. They were worried about the kids. They were worried about not being ready to start. And that shows their commitment and dedication to their kids.
Yeah. And if I could just add, I know some teachers were evacuated to hotels and they were trying to connect with families from their phones in the parking lots. And so it was awesome to see our community come together during that time.
Thank you. Thanks, Rhett, for joining us and for the report. Next up, Oregon School Employees Association, OSEA, and Tia Ross.
We did complete our MOU with the district, and I have to say, like, we're seeing you, but it's nice to see their faces, and they're so excited to be back in class and to have the connection with the staff again. So we're just moving forward and filling any role that needs to be filled to make it happen. And that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you for your report. And yeah, I don't want to disclose what we're not supposed to, but we're talking about hundreds of staff who were affected in some way by wildfire, either to level 2 or even a few in level 3 status. For them to retain, they just showcase their profession in how they've engaged students. I'll save the rest of my comments for the board reports because we're in it in the Peterson home. Okay. At this time, citizens' requests to the board. Mrs. Avery, did we receive any requests by email?
I did not receive any emails for citizens' requests to the board.
Okay. Okay, board reports. Time's been set aside on the agenda for the board members to provide brief updates. I'm going to start with Director Peluso, because you're in the top corner.
You may want to start out somewhere else so I can help her with her computer.
Thank you. You know, this whole
I think we got muted somewhere in there. Started strong though, so not yet. Oh, right
got
there,
it?
right there. We're set.
I got it already. Just from the legislative end of my song. Well, that song's, how do you say that? Swan song. It's almost coming to an end. So I'm kind of, we're not able to nobody can go to the Capitol. So that, you know, so it's just, I'm at home with a lot of good caucus things and Zooms and that kind of stuff. But however, I can't, you know, I have opportunities to be outside and to be healthy. So I have no complaints. I am a little anxious, though I will be very honest to say that to get to the end of this legislative session. So thanks, you guys.
Thank you. Director Howitt.
So just a couple of things. I was able to attend virtually the CUBE conference. It was kind of a last minute deal that OSBA was able to swing a couple of scholarships for us. So the CUBE is the Council of Urban Board of Education. So I attended some of their keynotes, and then I have an opportunity to go back and review some of the sessions, having been registered for it. So it's always a little bit revealing to realize how small we are in the big pond of things, but similar conversations and similar outreach trying to get to educating all the students. The other thing, we had a policy committee meeting this morning, first one kicked off the year, had quite a spirited conversation, and we have another meeting scheduled, I believe, next week to go over one of the policies. Lisa decided to bring out some of the big guns for us, so we are digging into it and hope to bring good, well thought out recommendations back to the board as we go through some of these policies. And that's my report.
All right, thank you. Director O'Connell.
Am I in the top right? Is Carlos in the top left?
No, I just swept across the top and now I'm coming right to left.
Just kidding. It was fun or interesting. Last week was the first time that we've met where I've been around directly with the board, and that was actually really fun because it was the first time in 8 months that I've seen you folks other than through Zoom. It was a good conversation that we had last week. But I also wanted to shout out to all the principals out there for because it is Principal Appreciation Month. I have kind of a thought process on principals. Students remember teachers and parents remember principals. And so I actually have a list of all the principals that my kids had through Gresham. So Anita Harris, everybody remembers her, Deborah James, Tim Tutty at Dexter, Carol Debrill, John Cook, thank you, John, Michael Schaefer, and of course, Carol Egan at Cal. And scarily, I actually remembered all those except for Deborah. I could not remember her first name. But again, just wanted to thank all the principals for what they do in the kids. Because I know the teachers work really hard with the kids, and again, the teachers remember the kids remember the teachers, but those principals are the face to the parents. And then Carla, I haven't seen you on the trail biking for a while.
Well, we're
I must be
muted.
getting cussed out.
Can't hear you, Carla.
Yeah.
She said she joined the Bend bike ride.
Oh.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's my report. Thank you.
Okay. Director Roscoe Beach.
Hi. Well, let's see. My report. It's been an eventful month. I had my first meeting with the Gresham-Barlow Education Foundation. Is that what it is, Lisa? Okay, cool. I did it right. So that was my first one. It was during the fires. I kind of just want to do a quick in and out just because I had a headache or I was super sleepy all the time during the fires. And I feel like I aged maybe like 3 or 4 years, not quite 5, but maybe 3 or 4 years just over the past month alone. Just hearing all the stress of like, the death of, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and just also dealing with the fires. The verdict for the Breonna Taylor case was incredibly traumatic, and the news of forced sterilizations of women in concentration camps in our country was like on the news for like a couple of days and people moved on. So I just feel like I just want to use this as an opportunity to remind people to vote. The registration deadline is the 13th. I know there's only so much that we can do, but I feel like women in general are just being mocked right now. And I'm just going to ask everyone right now to just do your part, vote, tell people to vote, tell people to be educated on who they're voting for. And yeah, it's pretty rough being a Black or brown woman in this country right now. So I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Director Stowers.
I have no report. Thank you.
Director Gomez.
Matt, my principal was John Cook. I'll leave it at that. So this month I had the opportunity, and it was an honor to work with Miss Darcy Locke at Clear Creek Middle School. She invited me to provide a video of how I celebrate my culture this is for Latinx Heritage Month. And her goal, the school's goal, is to norm cultural relevant teaching and culturally responsive practices in the school. So I enjoyed doing that. It was too bad that I couldn't visit this school in person. And also I joined Ms. Jessica Ramirez, the principal of Hollydale, for the back to school night. So she did it in Spanish. And I think I spend most of the time chatting with parents, trying to explain to them how to turn on their audio and how to navigate a Zoom session. So I'd like to connect with her and ask her what I missed, because I couldn't pay attention to what she was saying. But it was really nice to meet parents, at least virtually. So I'm looking forward to connecting with her again and meeting the staff there. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to really quick thank Sarah Avery and our district leadership team for facilitating in-person meetings. Over the last 2 months, we've started to phase some of those in as a board. I'd like to get better at that. I think it's the best way to receive public comment. We understand that emailing is not a great way to engage with the community. So, and it's always great to see each other in person. Feels more productive, more human, and so grateful to my colleagues on the board who have made those steps, but especially to the logistical wizards that our district leadership team are to make all this happen. We're back to school. We currently have 6 Gresham-Barlow students in our home. I have such admiration for our teachers. I've expressed that at every turn I can. It is, okay, I'm not a parent who listens in to the classroom. I just hear my daughter's, voice from outside of my office. And I'll tell you, it is remarkable to watch professionals suddenly take on challenges like teaching 5-year-olds to mute their mics and how to conduct a virtual meeting. It's just an incredible testament to the profession of educator. And I'd extend that to our administrators and our principals who decided over the summer that their roles were to be logisticians who figure out how to deliver meals to families, how to distribute 9,000 some devices. There is nothing easy about the role that you signed up for, and yet we've made it harder in the last year. So anyway, incredible appreciation to teachers who are doing everything they can to connect with kids. To kind of trace back to Rhett's comments about overwhelmed, absolutely understand why. Just watching educators, and I know families are overwhelmed as well, and great time for our community to offer grace to one another. So anyway, we're very grateful for this district. Thanks for all your hard work, team, and let's get these kids back to school safely somehow. So, all right, we're gonna move on. Our next is an informational item, financial update with Mr. Ely.
Thank you, Chair Peterson. As of August 31, both revenues and expenditures are trending unfavorably. These are very early projections and are not immediately cause for concern. However, there are items that will need to be monitored carefully as the year progresses. Regarding revenue, the significant factors creating an unfavorable condition are the lack of fees, gate admissions, and facilities rentals, along with meager investment returns. In all, revenue projections are trending under budget by just over $900,000. A quick aside on that, that $900,000 is assuming no fall activities. If at some point fall activities do open up, that will be impacted in that way. If they don't open up, then the lost revenue is completely offset by reduced expenditures because we're not providing that service. So again, not an immediate cause for concern. Regarding expenditures, the only concerning line item is charter school payments, currently on trend to exceed budget by nearly $1.5 million. These payments are based on the number of students served by our charter schools, which has increased this year based on initial enrollment figures. While these numbers are not favorable, they are based on very preliminary information and also utilize linear regression. Normally I wouldn't talk about methodology, but I know I've got a couple on the board who work in data, and anybody in the community that works with data will appreciate that this methodology does rely on consistent behavior against prior periods and or predictability. First quarter performance this year has not been consistent with prior years, nor is it predictable. A clear enrollment picture will be available after October 1 counts and our 10-day drop, as Mr. Cook talked about earlier, and a clear revenue picture will be available after our November property tax collection statewide. That is my report, and if there are any questions.
Last call for questions. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ely.
Thank you.
Okay. Our next meeting is scheduled for October 15th as a board work session. Most likely, board, this will be in person. I will work with Director Gomez and Dr. Pereira to figure out where to facilitate that meeting so that we can have it in person. November 5th, we will be back most likely with a remote meeting for our work session and regular board meeting, pending public safety guidelines. So with that, there being no other business before the board, we're adjourned.
Good night.
Good night.